Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I am Indah Fajaria, Doctoral degree of Literature Studies, Faculty of Humanities, University of Indonesia. Here my paper entitled Women's Movement Through Social Media, Feminist Activism on Instagram. You know that social media is not a new for global society, and there are many scholars who talk about social media and its benefits, its advantages regarding to some issues. I found that some previous research that talk about social media. The first is Suarez Carballo and friends. Suarez Carballo and friends talk about social media as visual communications in Instagram. Lee and friends, the next research, talk about social media's function as tool for feminist social movement. The third is Simos and friends. They talk about feminist activism along ICT. And the last is Karu. She talk about Arab women's movement. The difference is I'd like to talk about Indonesian feminist movement, Indonesian feminist activism on Instagram in the account entitled Perempuan. Along the stories, they talk about women movements. I analyzed the stories from January to August 2021. I used this course analysis workflow to see the relationship among the language and the social conditions as stated by the theory of workflow itself. The next is pivot theory of subaltern. Subaltern is in feminist is talking about the woman who cannot speak their voice because of the inferiorities. Therefore, they need spaces to voice their oppressions, their inferiorities, to set them free, or to voice what they feel, their trauma, to be heard by global society. And in this case, I found that this account, it is Instagram account, Perempuan, can represent the voice of women itself. I formulate the result and discussion into this table. The first, there are 4 issues. The first is sex and gender. In sex and gender discussions, the agenda of Indonesian feminist activism here is to educate people about sex and gender. For example, they discuss about cyber-based gender violence and the visibility of trans women and trans pria, so people can acknowledge more about the sex and gender correctly. The second is the discussion about sexual assault. They encourage and educating people, especially women, to talk about sexual assault, even though that actually sexual assault, in fact, it happens also to men. So it is interesting. I think I am interested to choose this account as my corpus here because they meanwhile they're talking about women's movement, about feminism, but the framing is not only for women, but they talk about the issue that happens to men also. We know that the big issues here is the domination of patriarchy. In this kind of issue, they said that along the stories, the oppressions, the violences along the domination of patriarchy can happen also to not only women but also men. Therefore, in the third issue, become their agenda. They spread the solidarity for women and men who feel inferior, who feel the oppression and so forth. They need to speak more. They need space to voice their trauma and so on. The last, they discuss about women's self-affirmation. In women's self-affirmation here, uh, this account, perempuan assist women to reinvent themselves after the trauma. So women, sometimes men, also was discussed. Mm, they need to get their self-affirmations to help them to overcome obstacles and to getting better by recalling moments in their life they were proud of. So it was interesting because after spreading solidarity, they also empower them to know more about themselves correctly, so they can appreciate more about uh, self-concept. The conclusion here, the writer found that the campaigns of feminist activism of perempuan along the stories in Instagram from January to August 2021 are about four insightful points. The activists try to voice the subalternity from the victims and elaborate more some discourse related to sex and sexuality. And the feminists discuss thoroughly about sex and gender, sexual assault discussions, spreading solidarities, and women's self-affirmations. And the writer also assumed that sexual violences that also become the major issue uh, can be categorized from three aspects: visual, verbal, and physics. I want to conclude one more my presentations, and I put here one of quote from Albert Einstein. He said that I never teach my pupils. I only attempt to provide a condition in which they can learn. So same as this account, perempuan and this Instagram through their stories, they try to provide a condition in which women and also at the same time sometimes men can learn about their conditions in the middle of the domination of patriarchy. They try to give space to mm, to help women to get justice, to get correct position, the equality, and their right and uh, better their better life among the dominations of patriarchy. That was all from me. Thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Here we can see that uh, there are various people here, male and female, and that is what Indonesian feminist activism in the stories of perempuan would like to propose, that actually people can live together happily if we can see all the colorful things in between. Thank you.